Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are positively doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour all week long, all year long, and on Friday we're going to be doing it with the Maryland Lottery and our friends at Goodwill. I'm wearing my Window Nation shirt. We're going somewhere new. We're going to Gunpowder Lodge. My buddy Danny Santoro, my pal JR, making those lobster rolls over there. Might have one of those as well. Be Friday 2 until 5. You know right where it is, on Bel Air Road, right between Harford County and Baltimore County and Kingsville. And as you're going down the hill, it's right on the left-hand side if you're going northbound. Stop by, say hello 2 until 5. Delicious menu and fun and great guest as well. Brooke Learman will be joining us on Friday, amongst others. We had Barry Glassman on Friday at Fadley's for my birthday. We also had Felicia Porter and Odette Ramos, two great council folks. And Tom Cole was just phenomenal on the election. I know it's election season, but the only election we're electing right now is 3-3 Baltimore Ravens. Luke Jones joins us a little groggy from the Meadowlands, from the swamps, where, dude, this is going to be a really rough week in Owings Mills. This is going to be a rough year in Owings Mills right now, given these losses and the way they've lost these football games, because it's so easy to say they had leads late in the fourth quarter. They should be 6-0, dude.
Well, they could be 2-4 if they didn't beat the Bengals. I mean, let's start going in the opposite direction here, because you can keep talking, explaining this away and say, okay, well, maybe Miami's really good before Tua got hurt, and they have Tyreek Hill and they have Jalen Waddle, and that kind of thing hadn't happened in 25 years, blowing a 3-touchdown lead. All right, fine. Well, then 2 weeks later, you blow a big lead against the Bills, and okay, fine. The Bills are the best Ravens. So you can keep explaining away, but I don't care that the New York Giants are 5-1. The Baltimore Ravens are more talented team than the Giants, period. They are. Now, that clearly doesn't decide football games. You have to go out and execute, and, false starts, penalties, mistakes, drop passes, inexcusable interceptions, not having the left tackle covered up on a key 3rd-and-1 play. I mean, just go down the list. Defense plays well in the first half, not as well in the second half, and couldn't get stops when they needed to. The Ravens have prided themselves, they've talked a lot about being a complementary football team over the last few years, going back to 2019, where they're 14-2 and looking like this unbelievable regular season juggernaut going into the postseason. And we know how that ended, but ever since then, I feel like they've been chasing that formula. And what we're seeing right now, Nestor, like you said, you can keep talking about how well they're playing for stretches of games, and they are. They had another double-digit lead. They've had a double-digit lead in every one of their 6 games this year, but they've become a team that's quite complimentary in figuring out ways to lose, and that's not a good thing. And you can say it's coaching. It is. You can say it's the offense. It is, including Lamar Jackson at critical times. You can say it's the defense. And it is at times. Even the special teams on Sunday faltered on a number of occasions. I mean, you just go down the list of things that the Ravens did poorly on Sunday. And, sure, give the Giants credit. They took advantage of opportunities. They hung around in the football game. We talked about it all week. That's a scrappy, well-coached team under Brian Dable and Wink Martindale. So, yes, give them their requisite credit. But, boy, you look at that game over the course of 60 minutes, and even when the Ravens had the lead, even a 10-point lead early in the fourth quarter, what were we saying over and over again? This game shouldn't be this close. And ultimately, it bit them in the end because the Ravens found another way to lose a football game. And, I'm tired of talking about this team's potential at this point. You need to go out and win football games. And they're not doing that at a high enough rate right now, and it's why they're 3-3.
He is Luke Jones. He is calling it the way he sees it. You mentioned snatching defeat out of the jaws of victory. Let's just start at the top. Let's start with Lamar, and we'll work our way back in regard to healthy, stronger, throwing the ball better on occasion. The long ball has seemingly lost him a little bit. I think the Bateman thing is a little bit of he was throwing the ball to Bateman in August, and things were going well. And then into September, and that guy's gone, and Duvernay's not him. And we know the rest of it down the line. There's no Hollywood. We can go through that. We're almost halfway through a season here again. We can't be talking about Hollywood Brown anymore. But the notion that Mark Andrews is the binky and he's getting doubled and tripled, at the end of the game when he's the target for the ball, and that Lamar would throw the kind of pass he threw across his body 25 yards down the field to Pat Ricard, of all things, to a fullback, to have a safety step in front of that ball in that position where they could have lived another day. I just, that's not a $232 million pass. And that's not going to win football games late. That's not a good decision. And it's certainly, it speaks to Lamar's competitiveness and wanting to win, that you wind him up and you put him out there, you're going to get this never quit, never die, never dirt, never take a knee, never turtle up, like all of that. And I don't want to say he's playing scared. There was a point early in the game where he got caught up in some motion and just sort of stopped running, which was bizarre. He's playing the game a little differently right now than maybe we thought he was going to play it a month ago. And now as we get into the season and the contract, this feels like it gets heavy for him when he comes out to the podium. I'm not in the locker room anymore, Luke. Do tell me, what's it like in the locker room when Lamar has his hands in his head? It looks to me like this is starting to get a little heavy on him. Not just the contract, but going out and playing on Sunday is hard enough to do. His effort the last couple of weeks has not been where it was earlier in the year. And certainly the delivering the ball has been, we were praising him for it 3-4 weeks ago, rightfully so. When the ball's going the wrong direction and when the decisions, when the heat of the game is on the line, got to be better than he was on Sunday.
Yeah, it's been very choppy. And I mean, I refuse to do this. This is a referendum on his contract every week. He's among the best quarterbacks in the league. He still is. Patrick Mahomes had a bad interception on Sunday. Those things do happen. However, that being acknowledged, the last 3 weeks, he's been a much choppier, inconsistent, not performing at the highest level quarterback. Now, let's keep in mind, if we're going to note what happened at the end of the game in the Meadowlands on Sunday, he did orchestrate the game-winning drive against Cincinnati the week before. So as much as that was a choppy performance, he was good very late in that football game, and it's his legs and a couple throws to Mark Andrews were the reason that they had Justin Tucker in position to make the game-winning field goal. But to your point, he was performing at a very high level the first 3 weeks of the season. Was regarded as an MVP favorite at that point. And again, we do this, and it's not just here in Baltimore. I mean, MVP odds and betting and all that stuff is out there every single week. I get emails from individuals with the odds for the MVP after week 3, week 4.
Dude, I was
6.
in a casino Sunday.
Yeah,
I almost bet the under at
I
halftime because it looked like betting the under at halftime would have been a good bet.
Right. So that's just that's just the world we're living in at this point. It's not even a commentary on whether that's good or bad. It's just reality. But over the last 3 weeks, we have seen a Lamar Jackson that hasn't been as consistent. At times, the footwork goes away. It certainly is not helping that Rashad Bateman is not out there. And you mentioned we can't keep talking about Hollywood Brown. I'd say, well, why can't we? Because there were plenty of people saying, all right, good value on the trade. And look, early snap aside, I do like Tyler Linderbaum, and I think he's been a plus much more than he's been a minus, and that's a good thing. But this was never a question of were the Ravens getting proper value for Marquise Brown. The question was, did they have enough at wide receiver in the aftermath of that trade? And well, if Rashad Bateman goes down and Devin Duvernay is supposedly now your de facto number 1, and he has 1 catch for 14 yards on Sunday, well, you're looking at the wide receiver position. But that aside, drops and other things that happened. I mean, the pre-snap penalties, inexcusable from the offensive line. I mean, it was not that loud. It was not packed to the gills at MetLife, although it filled up for the most part as the game went on. But, just the defensive line shifting was giving them a lot of trouble with the false starts. And, we already talked about the illegal formation, but ultimately, Tyler Linderbaum snaps the ball prematurely. It's a little offline on top of that. So right away on that 3rd and 5, you're in a bad situation, right? Lamar's going backwards, happen to pick up the ball. He makes a bad play.
By the way, can I say something about that play? Because I watched it 10 times, afterward when I got back from Hollywood Casino and whatnot. The shade of the field, there was sun along 2 lines and the stadium lights were there. I thought he didn't see the ball in the light to some degree. You're saying early snap, that's fine. It wasn't online, but it hit him in the hands. I don't think he saw the ball. So, like, after watching it, it looked like a center fielder, sun shade, sun shade. If you go back and watch that play, it was a little freaky from a sun perspective that the ball hit him. No excuses, but an excuse for him. I want to be pro Lamar here for a little while.
Well, I mean, he didn't mention that. No one else mentioned that. I mean,
Okay, fair enough.
And the one thing I would say is if you go back and look, it does seem like the rest of the offensive line is a half beat slower than the snaps, which would indicate again that the snap was premature. Regardless, when he's picking up the ball in that situation and he's already at that point, 18 yards behind the line of scrimmage, whatever it was, throw the ball away. You still have the lead at that point in time. This isn't a case where you're down 4 and it's desperation because it's 4th down or something. Throw the ball away. That is such a bad play right there by any quarterback. And again, it does happen. As we said, Patrick Mahomes throws picks. The best of the best make mistakes sometimes. But in that
You're not going to coach a
situation,
Superman out of Lamar.
right? Well, and you mentioned that, and there is a little bit of Barry Sanders in him in that way, right? I mean, think about it. Barry Sanders, one of the all-time great running backs, but he also had his share of games where 18 carries for 9 yards because Barry Sanders would run behind the line of scrimmage to try to hit a home run. And at times the Packers or the Bears or the Vikings would stop him behind the line of scrimmage. And
it's second and 18.
Yeah, maybe it should have only been second and 11 and it's second and 18, like you just said. So you do have to take the bad with the good, but the last 3 weeks it's been a little bit too much bad and not quite enough good for stretches, and that's cost him against Buffalo. He did not play well and rough elements, certainly, but Josh Allen played in those same elements and certainly outplayed him in the second half of that football game, and the Cincinnati game. For as much as we talk about the final drive and what he did do there, and he got the job done. Again, I want to stress that, we can't just talk about the end of game failures and not acknowledge end of game success, but it was his interception that kind of got Cincinnati back in the game in the first half. So, it's been choppy and not he hasn't been as good over the last 3 weeks as he had been over the first 3, but that play specifically, the interception, if you're throwing that ball up to Mark Andrews, I can at least understand it to the point that how many times have we seen Lamar make a, quote, ill-advised throw to Mark Andrews, and he catches it anyway just because, other than Travis Kelce, no one is at his level right now. I mean, that's just where Mark Andrews is as a tight end in this league. So if it's to him, I'm not saying that you want to pick there ever, but if it's at least him being targeted, you can at least understand it that, okay, he gave Andrews a chance to make a play, but it's Patrick Ricard. Look, he's a Pro Bowl fullback. Everyone loves Patrick Ricard for what he does. A jump ball 20 yards downfield is not Patrick Ricard's skill set. So, I mean, it was a bad play made exponentially worse by a decision by your quarterback that you can't have. I mean, that's not an MVP play right there. And again, it does happen. No quarterback is perfect, but Lamar Jackson's got to wear this one. That was a back-breaking mistake. But again, as we mentioned, there's a lot of blame to go around right now. And again, you said it begins with Lamar. I disagree with that. It begins with John Harbaugh at this point. This is a team that is making unforced errors, self-inflicted mistakes, things. I mean, they're killing themselves right now with these errors and mistakes at inopportune times. So that starts with coaching. You can talk all you want about, okay, well, it wasn't the play call. So-and-so didn't make the catch or so-and-so didn't make the tackle. Ultimately, execution still comes back to coaching, right? Because these players aren't getting the job done and they're making a lot of bad mistakes in bad situations. And that doesn't absolve the players. Let me be clear about that. Again, it's everything. Offense, yes. Defense, yes. Special teams on Sunday specifically, yes. Coaching, yes. Quarterback play, yes. I mean, go down the list of things. This is a team that they should be better than 3-3. Sure, I'll buy that. But at some point in time, they're not. You're living off reputation, right? I mean, it just, you can keep thinking you're this great. And I think a great example of this is look at the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday night. I feel like that's the kind of team that the Ravens fancy themselves having the potential of being. But even looking that game, Philadelphia had a 20-point lead. Dallas comes, they come back in the football game. They're forcing the issue. It's a one-score game. What did Philadelphia do? They delivered a knockout punch with the touchdown in the fourth quarter to kind of answer back and say, all right, this isn't going to happen. And they closed out the football game. Probably a little tighter than they would have liked, but hey, it's the NFL. I mean, the other team tries too, right? So you see that compared to what the Ravens have largely done in these fourth quarters of games where they have a lead and the opposition comes punching back. And they're just, I don't know what it is exactly, but it's concerning at this point. Again, Miami, great talent at wide receiver. The Ravens didn't have Marlon Humphrey on the field in the fourth quarter in that football game. Marcus Peters was just coming back. They had Jalen Armour-Davis at corner, who's been a healthy scratch the last 3 weeks. I mean, it kind of shows you where their trust is in the rookie fourth rounder. So, all right, if it happens once, it happens once, right? 2 weeks later, it happens against Buffalo. Oh, the Bills are the best team in the AFC. Fine. The Giants, really? And again, I don't want to be too disrespectful because they are 5-1, but I'm sorry. Anyone who watched that football game, look at the final numbers. Look how many yards the Ravens gained compared to the Giants. They had no business losing that football game, yet they were very complimentary in finding a way to lose in the end.
Luke Jones will be covering all things Ravens all week long. I'll be watching my Padres in the Philadelphia Phillies. His brother-in-law will be watching the Phillies as well, as we have NLC, ALCS action baseball going on all week. You can find Luke's work out at Baltimore. Luke, of course, I'll be doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour at Gunpowder Lodge this Friday as well with our friends at the Maryland Lottery, including Window Nation and, of course, Goodwill. And we have lots of things going on around here, but when we start talking about Lamar, and I know you're like, I don't want to do a referendum on his money. I don't want to do a referendum on the contract. I had the occasion to actually listen to post-game radio on Sunday. Poor Keith Mills taking calls. I wrote about that in my column, if you want to go read about it. The contract part of this and the investment part, that is the referendum. I mean, that really is where this is as to what he's worth, how much is guaranteed money, how much is too much, should he have signed the deal, should Bisciotti have given him the money. That's part of the intrigue of all of this because the ceiling is so high and the floor feels low when you're 3-3, right? And it feels like what's going on here. And in a contract year, this is Lamar playing for money, right? I mean, Lamar's walking the tightrope. Lamar only gets the money by throwing the ball, not dirting the ball. In his mind, right? Like my friends in Venezuela not walking off the island when it comes to baseball and getting paid for getting a contract, right? There is this Superman thing that he's done so many times that only he does to get into the phone booth to make the throw no one else can make off the back foot across his body late in the game to shock and awe. Like he visualizes that from a winning standpoint, and you don't do that by dirting the ball on third down, right? Like, so he's just wired differently. And in the case of where the organization is, they are where they are. They could tag him next year and do all of that stuff. But the fact that this conversation is going on in between week 6 and week 7, this is shame on all of them for having us talking about his money. And we talked about this before the season began, that wins, we're going to talk about Steve better pay him. And losses, well, alligator arms, as I wrote in column this, when it comes to giving Lamar the money. But that's the nature of what the two of them in doing this contract dance over the biggest contract in the history of North American sport, right? Guaranteed money for a football player. Baseball players, I guess Aaron Judge will get $232 million or something like that from whoever he gets it from. And I'll ask you where he's going in another segment. But in the case of Lamar, the fact that we're talking about his money every week, dude, I would have told you that 8 weeks ago. Because if he's Jalen Hurts and they're 6-0 right now, it would be give him $332 million at this point. That's where the fan base would be. But watching him make these really critical mistakes at key times, it is troubling. And I bet it's troubling to John Harbaugh, Eric DeCosta, and Steve Bisciotti, even though they haven't paid him the money. This isn't a good referendum on him right now.
Well, and let me go back to what I was saying. I meant as far as he's only worth this amount now, or
He's
it's all
unsigned, and that's the problem. The
he's
problem is it's
unsigned.
dangling for me.
Right, but at the same time, I don't look at how he's performed through 6 games and say I don't want to commit to him long term. I mean, seriously,
What are my other options?
right, exactly. What are your other? There are no other options. It's to go roll the dice in the draft, and you might have, you might get lucky, or you might have.
Hey, dude, Daniel Jones beat him on Sunday. You can have Daniel Jones.
Yeah, go see how that's gonna, how that's turned out for the most part for the Giants. But hey, Daniel Jones played well in crunch time on Sunday. I'll give him credit, but has he played like what the Giants envisioned 4 years ago when they drafted him? No, of course.
You can have that kid in New England too, by the way.
Right.
Right. I mean, these guys that are just
Bailey
guys.
Zappi might be the next Tom Brady.
Yeah, you want
point.
Kirk Cousins? I mean, seriously, and they're fine.
Right.
They're playing well. But
Right.
But my point is, we still sort of want Lamar. But this whole dance about money and up and down and the weekly referendum, it feels like it's heavy for him. It feels like this would be better served for him to play better but again, if he wanted to be here, he would have taken the Ravens' money to some degree and worked his best deal. I'm of the mindset that he's trying to go somewhere else, and that's just me, and time will play that out as to whether he'll be here or not. But when this happens, this all plays into, at the end of the year, is he going to be here? Is he not? Is he a long-term solution for the Ravens financially? And that's the $232 million question, right?
Yeah, fair enough. And look, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's not a factor or something that I don't think he's thinking about it as he's in the middle of a play, but it has to be something that I think it would be. You wouldn't be human if that wasn't something that's crossing your mind, at least at points during the week,
It's crossing everybody else's mind.
When your head hits the pillow at night, right? I mean, think about all of us in our everyday lives with job situations.
If I was sitting right now with a Maryland lottery ticket that was a $200 million ticket, I don't know what I would do to protect that ticket, what safe I would put it in if I couldn't cash it until next year, where I would bury it in the backyard and never tell anybody. I don't know. It is heavy. And all that being said, he's got plenty of money. He's already cashed $30-40 million worth of money. Mom's okay. He's fine. It's not like you and me having a lottery ticket and, eating, chicken boxes from Royal Farms waiting to cash our ticket, right? But he is this very, very Roger Dorn valuable piece of property, right? And even early in the game, that little stutter step where he stopped running and was just trying to slide out of bounds at one point. He is looking for sticks. He is looking to avoid contact in much more of a not run into linebackers way. And I always bring that up from 5 years ago. But he's playing the game a little differently, and probably because they're in his ear telling him to play the game differently, and probably because he remembers you asking him if he had insurance.
Although I will say he did run for 77 yards on Sunday too. So, I mean, it's not as though the run is, are there times? Sure. Do I think it's something that's detrimental? No. I mean, he needs to protect himself at the proper times. So ultimately, again, Lamar Jackson, there was good on Sunday. I mean, the touchdown to Andrews, beautiful throw. I mean, there were some throws he made that he gave his receivers a chance and they didn't make the play. And I'll go back to the wide receiver position. And do they have enough behind Rashad Bateman and Devin Duvernay? I think the answer is no, clearly. But ultimately, again, you come back to that moment in time, bad snap, early snap, however you want to describe it, took a bad play and made it so much worse by throwing that interception. And he'd be the first to tell you that. He knows, but you can't have that from your best player if you're trying to hold on and win a football game in that spot. And ultimately, Lamar faltered, as did many other individuals on Sunday, and the Ravens come home licking their wounds at 3-3.
Oh, we'll talk about Ronnie Stanley and Kenyon Drake and the defense and Marcus Peters and coaching and Greg Roman and Mike McDonald. I am Nestor. He is Luke. We can follow along all week long here as we get ready for the Cleveland Browns and a short week next week against the GOAT, who had his own problems with the Pittsburgh Steelers over the weekend. He is Baltimore Luke. He will be in Owings Mills all week long. I will be at Gunpowder Lodge on Friday, right on Bel Air Road. Stop by, see us between 2 and 5. It's all brought to you by the Maryland Lottery in conjunction with Window Nation and Goodwill. I am Nestor. He is Luke. We are WNST, AM 1570. It's House in Baltimore, and we never stop talking. Lamar Jackson, the Ravens lost in the Meadowlands, and Baltimore positive.